Welcome back to another episode of Inside Richmond, the City's Pulse. I'm Lindsay Darnell, your host, and today I have Natalie joining us from the Wayne-Union CASA. Natalie, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So we've got you on here. You reached out to me, and I'm glad you did because your organization does a lot of good within the community. So can you introduce CASA and what does it stand for, and how did the Wayne and Union County program get its start?
Okay, so just a little bit about CASA. So Wayne-Union County CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. And we have volunteer advocates as well as a staff advocate that advocate for the best interest of the child. So these are children that have been abused and or neglected in our community and removed from their home. They're in foster care, and we are sort of like a helper or an oversight almost in the system. There's a lot of different players and pieces. So we're different from DCS. We don't do what DCS does. We only get to know the child and their holistic situation, all the people and players in their life, and make the best interest advocations for them with the court.
Okay. The mission states that CASA stands up for abused and neglected children to help them find safe, permanent homes. How does that manifest in day-to-day work?
So for our volunteers, it's not so much day-to-day work. Our office staff, it's a little bit more day-to-day. Our volunteers, I would think of it more of a monthly commitment, about 10 to 15 hours a month. And a huge part of that is getting to know the child that you're working with. So our volunteers are required to have at least one meeting a month with that child and also collect all of the data and information. And like I said before, get to know all of the players to form a holistic picture of what that child's life looks like. Our goal is always reunification when possible with the parents. So that's something to note. But in occasions where that's not possible, then the advocacy could turn into a safe, permanent placement in a different way.
Okay. And your program serves both Wayne and Union counties and is certified by the Indiana Supreme Court. How does that affiliation shape your training and operations?
I feel like that makes our training a little bit more robust. So we actually, at a state level, just rolled out a hybrid training program, which I personally participated in to have that experience. And I found it to be very, very beneficial, working with some amazing people on a state level. And then after those parts of the training were over, the last part was done in our local office at a local level. And I thought that was a really nice touch. But we also still do have sort of a streamlined program that goes along with the state guidelines, but also supports our local interests because each county does look a little bit different on how things work.
Okay. So going back to volunteers, because you have your small office that have you guys in it, and then the volunteers. Can you tell us what exactly does a CASA volunteer do from investigation to court appearances?
Yeah. So after a volunteer goes through training and a background check, they'll spend a little bit of time in court seeing what a real case looks like. So it's not just a blind thing. You have to keep in mind the number one way that you advocate for a child and give them a voice is through your court reporting. So that court report gets submitted to our office approximately 10 days before the court date. And that gives time for proofreading or any adjustments that need to be made. And then it goes to the judge. And the judge utilizes that information to help make decisions because it turns out our judges can't be everywhere all the time. So part of the investigation, I don't know if I want to call it an investigation, but part of the process, I guess I'll refer back to best interest advocacy, which would be learning, engaging, recommending, collaborating, and reporting. So the first thing we want to do is learn about the situation. We're going to go through all of the data as a volunteer, find out what brought the child into care, about the different people involved in their life and any issues they might be having. It could be a medical issue, a mental health issue, school issues, just really a whole picture of that child. Then we're going to engage with that child. We want to know them, know about them. They're more than just someone on a piece of paper, right? Like anybody can take data from a piece of paper and read and say, oh, okay, I think I know Lindsay now because I read about her. Actually engaging with a person face-to-face, might give you a different picture or a different perspective. So it's really important to make that connection for best advocacy. Then based on those two parts of the puzzle, that is where our recommending for a volunteer would come in. So you're going to be making those recommendations in your court report that reflect the information that you've learned from data and also engagement. Everything is black and white. So if you make a recommendation, you need to be able to reference it back somewhere else in your court report. Everything is fact-based. So that's important. And then collaborating, you need to be a good collaborator. You're going to, as a volunteer, work with a lot of different people, biological parents, foster parents. It could be a provider, a school teacher, a guidance counselor. Obviously, the child is most important, front and center, but collaboration is a huge part. And then reporting, like I said, everything ties back to that court report. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure that our volunteers get the support they need, so we don't just throw you to the wolves for court reporting. We have a template. It's covered thoroughly in your training. In fact, you'll do a mock court report with a case where it would look like a real case except for a child, to make sure that you're secure in that moving forward.
Can you discuss a time when a volunteer's advocacy significantly influenced a court's decision?
I would actually be bold enough to say that that's all the time.
All the time?
Yeah. So I think that in a perfect scenario, every child would have an advocate, because there are so many different players and pieces involved in the work that we do. I mean, even outside of CASA, just a child's journey through being removed from the home. I think that every single time there's a CASA, it's another set of eyes, it's another safety in place. The reality is most of our CASA volunteers have one case usually, maybe one or two. So if you have time to direct your attention to one child versus DCS, which I'm not throwing them under the bus, they do great and amazing work, but the reality is, like, they're overburdened. They have tons and tons of cases, and they're collecting data and they're getting all the information, but they have so many people to worry about. So it's nice to have that extra set of eyes just on that child.
I didn't ever really think of it that way, but that's a great way to explain a volunteer is, yes, they have multiple cases that they're watching, but you have one volunteer that's specifically with this one child. They're not going from this child to this child, so they can have more eyes and more, perception of what's going on.
Right. It's a lot easier to be responsible for one child's case than, let's say, 12 or 14 children's cases. I mean, there's a huge difference. There's only so many hours in the day. And like I said, I'm not saying anything bad about anyone. I really admire the work that everyone does to play their part in the system. But speaking just from the CASA role, I think that extra set of eyes sometimes is really nice to have someone just for the child.
So do you guys only give your volunteers one child at a time?
So usually, and definitely to start, we would only give you one child at a time. We do have a very, 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 very long time volunteer. I'm not going to say how many years. Throw her under the bus.
Yeah.
She's amazing, and she knows who she is. So she can take more than one at a time. But, again, it's a volunteer position. No one wants to overwhelm someone. And we also, there's limits on what we can and can't do too.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, and we were talking before the podcast started, and something that you had mentioned really resonates is that there's compassion burnout.
Yeah.
So you don't want to burn out your volunteers as well.
We do not want to burn out our volunteers. I think that we have safeties in place to make sure that our volunteers feel supported, and we want to help them and engage with them in any way that we can. I would hope that our volunteers feel like they can talk to us if they are experiencing anything like that.
Right. But
we try to do a good job of getting people together for meetings and, partnering and mentoring where we need to. We're always there if someone needs help. It can be tough work sometimes. It's not for everyone. I'll be transparent. Like, sometimes things are sad, but then the things that are happy are amazing, and you really do make a huge difference in a child's life.
Yeah. And that's amazing. It's amazing work what you guys are doing right now.
Thank you.
So the next question that I would like to ask is, with nearly 3,000 children in care statewide and 118 supported locally in 2023, what's the typical caseload per volunteer? Are you fully staffed?
We are definitely not fully staffed as far as volunteers go. We are less than 1/6 staffed as far as volunteers go. So I actually got this figure yesterday. So as of yesterday, we have 109 kids in our program that are still waiting for an advocate. So in a perfect world, every child would have an advocate to, be their voice and look out for their best interests. So it's kind of a sobering number when you think about it. So yeah, as of yesterday, 109 kids.
How many volunteers do you guys have in Wayne County? Do you have that number, or is it a collective of Wayne and Union?
So we have a collective of Wayne and Union County. Right now, I think we have about 13 volunteers for Wayne County. We also have a few that are, I think we have 2 or 3 that are pending, people who are going through the process and going to complete their training and move forward. So that's really nice. But ideally, in a perfect world, if I could wave my magic wand, we would have 60 volunteers in Wayne County to be able to support our program needs the best.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, let's see. Can you walk us through the training process? How do you recruit, screen, and prepare volunteers for the sensitive work?
Yeah, so it definitely is sensitive work. If you're considering coming into this, you do have to realize that you're going to have sensitive information about children and also their parents. So it's really important to keep that private. That's part of your oath when you get sworn in court after the end of your training. The main things that you need to know to be a volunteer: you must be at least 21 years old, have a high school diploma. You have to pass a background check. I will say one thing that I would advocate for is if you have a blip, like let's say when you were 17, you got arrested for reckless driving or something like that. Please disclose that. And you're 52 now. I still need you to disclose that because sometimes we do have things that come up and people think, oh, well, I was a minor, so it didn't matter. But we need you to be transparent. I'm not saying that means you will be accepted or you will be precluded, but I just ask for people to be honest about that background check. So that's part of it. But the number one thing I need you to have, if you want to be a volunteer advocate, is a heart for children. So someone who's compassionate. We can teach you the rest, right? So if your heart's in the right place and you feel called to do this, we can let you know about everything else and provide that training. But a big part of that is you have to be responsible and accountable with that information. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you guys get this information out a lot, or does it typically just kind of come into effect when there is a child that comes in and is needing an advocate? How do you get the information out that you are in need of volunteers?
So we're always in need of volunteers right now. I'm new to this position, even though I'm not new to CASA, like I shared with you previously. And I am just starting in this role to try to get that information out. My seat had been vacant for a long time prior to me coming in. So I've tried to really engage with different community events. We've done some sponsorships. I'm sure you've seen my signs all over town. I think I've plastered both counties. So shout out to all the local businesses for doing that and supporting us with our flyers. That's been great. We have some coffee shops even that have been letting us do like a sleeve campaign with some stickers. And we're just posting and trying to get everything everywhere we can. We just want to make people aware we're here. I think a lot of people don't know about our program. That's a big part of it. And I think a lot of people feel intimidated because it is a big volunteer position, or they think like, oh, I have to be a teacher or a psychologist or whatever. No, we need people from every walk of life. Interestingly, when looking at our data yesterday, our data for the kids in care similarly reflects the data of our community, the demographics. So we need all different demographics from people from our community to support that and make sure that everyone's represented the best way possible.
So tell us where your office is located.
So our office is located on the first floor of the Wayne County Courthouse. So we're right there in the courthouse for ease and accessibility. And that's also where we hold our meetings with our volunteers. So like I said before, we try to get together about once a month for a volunteer meeting. We also have a newsletter. We have ongoing training opportunities that are usually online as well. So we do have that because it's important. So we have to do about 12 hours a year of ongoing training on top of that 30 hours of initial training.
Now, does the volunteers come to your office at the courthouse to meet with the child, or?
No, actually. They meet with the child in the community. So most often it's in the home where the child is placed. But sometimes you'll have a foster parent or whatever the placement situation is that might want to meet at a park, the library. I've had kids that I've gotten to know ask me to come to school lunch with them and meet with them there. So that always feels really nice. So we don't drive the children anywhere. So it has to be somewhere that works out for the placement to meet us at, to spend that time together.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was curious. I was wondering, like, does the volunteers come and pick them up, maybe take them to McDonald's and sit down and talk to them over a Happy Meal or?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we can't do that. So.
Okay. All right. So that's good for the clarification.
Yeah.
Beyond training, how do you support the volunteers emotionally? I know that you were saying you have mentorship. You guys have meetings monthly to have them come in. Is there a hotline that they can call?
So I have a work cell phone, and everyone knows I'm always available. So I leave it on pretty much all of the time. If you're a volunteer, I don't care if it's 2 p.m. on my day off or 2 a.m. on a weekend. If you are in crisis or having a problem, like, you're always welcome to call, and, you know, we'll help you get whatever support you need. Okay. I will say that I think our volunteers are great, and a lot of the things that are sort of barriers towards compassion burnout, we really talk about and cover in our training as well. And when you couple that with the supports that we have in place, I think that we're really lucky that we have the ability to support our volunteers in a way where I think that would be an outlier situation. I'm not going to say it never happens, because it could happen to anyone at any time. But I do think that our volunteers are really well prepped, and that we make things happen for them to prevent that.
That's really good that you guys are there and that support system's there for your volunteers. What advice would you give someone who's been on the fence about applying, and what qualities make an excellent CASA volunteer?
So if you're on the fence about applying, I think that already means you're a yes, because you wouldn't be considering taking on something like this if it wasn't already sort of on your heart. So I would encourage you just to come out and learn more. Also, you're welcome to, you can look on our website, so you can email us, you can call us. We're happy to talk you through any questions or concerns you might have. I know that everyone's are different, right? So we have a lot of conversations. But yeah, if you think it's for you, just take the leap, right? Because it is a process with the volunteerism to get involved, because we do have to, you do your application, and then we require 3 references. The references return a survey about you. We do the background check and an interview. Like, it is kind of a lengthy process to become a volunteer, because it is serious work. It's very rewarding, but, you know, it is a child's life.
Yes.
So.
Yes, which is very important, because their life is just beginning.
Right. And we want all of them to have the best opportunity possible, which is why we're all doing this.
Right.
So, but yeah, if you're on the fence, come on out, learn more, ask questions. Don't be afraid. We would love to give you any information you're looking for in a realistic way. According to research, children with a CASA, they fare better in general. So this is something that we know. They're more likely to find a safe, permanent home, which is a great thing, obviously. They're more likely to succeed in school. And one of my favorite facts is that they are half as likely to re-enter the foster care system. So unfortunately, sometimes children do re-enter the foster care system, but they have found that children supported by a CASA are half as likely. And it's also just sort of like a fun CASA fact to note, because there's so many people involved in the process once a child enters care. A lot of times, depending on what stage they're at, they might have different kinds of providers that move around or rotate. So they see a lot of changing faces, and sometimes they even change placements in homes and things. So if you're a CASA who comes in to the case, you might be the only consistent person that child sees from beginning to end. And I think that's something really special, and just a unique way that we can support that child by being there as a consistent figure in their life.
And that could be scary for a child to see so many different faces. You know, I couldn't even imagine that if I was placed somewhere else that wasn't my home, even if it wasn't the greatest, you know, situation, and then having to move or constantly move. I mean, we hear about that all the time, that, you know, some kids are being placed in, you know, multiple foster homes a year. I've never really thought of it being local. I've, you know, heard stories about it, or we've seen TV shows or movies that kind of hit on that. Yeah. But no one really knows, like, the real, situation that's really happening in real life. We kind of just see things like they're in a movie. So to be that consistent figure in a child's life is really important for them.
Yeah, it is really important. And like I said, you get to know them and you actually form a relationship. You'll be surprised. So I can talk from personal experience since I started out as a volunteer way back when. I did it because I had sort of a soft spot in my heart for children that, had been abused or neglected. And I wasn't sure how long I would do it or what the impact would be. The question in the back of my mind was like, am I really going to make a difference as a volunteer? And then after I saw my first case through, I just couldn't believe it. It was overwhelming, and I was able to see the impact that I made on that child go from a really bad situation to a really good situation. So, yeah, it's really, really, really rewarding.
And that is, rewarding that you can see the impact that you make on a child.
Yeah. And not just a child, a family, because, a lot of times when you start this journey with a child's case, you're seeing that family at the worst point in their lives, right? Like, I don't think any of us want judged on our worst day or the worst thing we've ever done. One of the things that we cover in training is definitely bias. You have to definitely look at things through a resource lens and find the positives, because we all have positives and negatives no matter who we are. Mm-hmm. So it's just really important to remember that, like, this is a family, whatever that looks like. Their definition of family is like, this is the child's family. And again, to reiterate, reunification is always our goal where possible to bring, that family back together. Now, the parent parts, the other people, that's DCS, that's other providers, but for the child, we really have to keep that in perspective.
Mm-hmm. So I know you were kind of talking a little bit about this, but if you had unlimited volunteers, what would your dream impact look like in Wayne and Union counties?
So if I could wave my magic wand and I had my dream volunteers, I think that the impact would be that we would have children that everybody was advocated for and best served. So every child's best interest would be at heart and be, covered, and through that court reporting, going directly to the judge. That's the judge's eyes and ears, right? Mm-hmm. So I wish that for every child who's in care. I wish for them to have the best outcome for their life and to support them in every way possible. And I think that if we did have more volunteers to impact more children, that would be, a great accomplishment. And like I already touched on, so children are half as likely to end up back in care. I can't say because we don't know, it hasn't happened, but I would like to believe that if we could do that, it would cut down on children in care in Wayne and Union counties in general.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a memorable success story where a permanent nurturing home became possible thanks to CASA?
Yes, I do actually. I'll try not to cry. I'm a crier, okay. So buckle up, everybody.
Okay, don't cry because I might cry.
Okay, so we're going to try to not make everyone cry in here today. So I had a case once with 6 siblings. And when this case began, the children had been removed for pretty much every kind of neglect and abuse you can cover, including a couple of them had been trafficked. It was very severe. And I, at that point, even with using my non-biased lens, would have bet you any amount of money that those kids probably were never going to be able to go home. Like, I really thought it wasn't going to happen. There were a lot of mental health issues with parents and children. There were also some health issues with some of the children. It was just a lot. There was a lot going on. And this case actually ended up going on for years. And by the time the case was done, the oldest child had actually graduated high school and ended up going to college, because that child had been able to turn their life around by being supported by services that were put into placement that I had recommended. So basically every child ended up having a great outcome. The parents did all of their services through DCS, and the family was reunited and stayed together. And as of my last checkup, this has been like years ago, not like check up, but because some of the kids are adults, they had like reached out to me through other avenues. You don't usually stay in contact with a child, but if you're an adult and you decide to contact me, like, I'm not going to say no. Mm-hmm. And it was still a success. So
were you the volunteer for all 6 siblings?
I was, yes, okay. Yes. That's not a normal situation. Yeah. That's not a normal situation, but I'd been a volunteer for a long time at that point, and I felt comfortable doing that. So,
well, and I think that's a great thing that you were able to do because you had the experience, and so you kind of already knew how to go about it. But to keep all of the siblings with one volunteer, so they're not just seeing multiple people at different times.
And they were actually placed in different placements at different times.
Oh, so you were having.
So I was like, and they had moved around a couple times, and so there were a lot of moving pieces. But I think that every court case that I've ever been assigned to, I'm really thankful for, and I would consider to be a beautiful outcome no matter what it is, because in every situation, either reunification has occurred or the child has found a permanent, safe, and loving home. Mm-hmm. But that one just stands out to me because, it was like a big sibling group, and they all went on, and it was really beautiful.
Able to come back and all stay together.
Yeah.
And not be separated.
With mom and dad.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Can you share a personal moment that reminds you why this work matters, something that touched you deeply? I know you talked about this, but do you have any other, or maybe tell us, how did you get started? Did you hear about CASA?
Yeah, so I actually, at the time, I knew I've always been a big believer in advocacy and activism, right? I think you should help out in your community wherever that's at. That's huge to me. And I was in a new community at the time looking for something to do. And I kept going through like all these different things and saying like, none of these really inspire me. I don't really know. And then I read about CASA and I was like, wow, I think that might be something I'm really interested in. But like a lot of people think, I was like, ooh, they probably wouldn't want me. I think they probably want a certain kind of volunteer who's better than me.
Yeah.
That's what I thought at the time, right? And so I went to an informational session. I learned more. I talked to the director and the recruiter. And then I was like, okay, like this is for me. I just knew I'm going to do this.
After you went to the informational?
It's like once I went to the informational session and I understood more about how it worked, I became much more comfortable. Mm-hmm. And that's why I always encourage people, like if you have a question or you're on the fence, please reach out. Like we can explain. It's so much information that you're getting like a blip of it right now. Like I can sit here and tell you like you need 30 hours of training and you need to do this and you need to do that. But, one-on-one, I can answer your finer questions. Mm-hmm.
Okay, tell us a little bit about how the program started.
Okay, so as you know, there is an Indiana CASA. There's also a national CASA. And the program in Wayne-Union County originally began in 1989, but that was several directors ago, and it didn't always look the same as it does now. So the current iteration of our program actually began in 2005, doing work in this capacity with volunteers and advocacy.
That's amazing. Can you tell us about upcoming events or volunteer orientations that's going to be happening within this year or even next year?
Yeah, I can definitely share that with you. So if you want more information, we will have an in-depth information session coming up on July 30th, which is a Wednesday, at the Morrison Reeves Library in the Bard Room. It will be from 6 to 7 p.m., and we'll also have a Q&A after that's over. I can also stick around and answer any questions that people have one-on-one. As far as upcoming trainings and different things like that, we always have trainings upcoming. So when we have enough volunteers who sign up, we hold a training. Yeah, and so that 30 hours is spread out. It's not all at once where we're like, okay, come here for 2 days or 3 days. Like, we want you to have time to digest and really get the information and do the work in between. So, yep, we always have trainings available. And like I said, first step, like you just have to fill out that application because it does take some time to go through that whole process with the background check and everything.
And that application can be found on your guys' website?
Yep, you can find the application on our website. It's right there. It's easy to click on. Also, if you're out and about and you see our signs and flyers in town, the QR code will take you to our website. And my contact information is also on there, my email and my work phone number.
Okay. So that is the first step to becoming a volunteer is the application.
Yes. So before we can do any training, we need to make sure that, you're a good fit for the program and also that the program is a good fit for you. So it's to help everyone and make sure that, everyone will be happy.
Yes. So my last question is going to be, how can listeners step in, whether as volunteers or advocates?
So I think that everybody can be an advocate in a way, maybe not a court-appointed special advocate, but just be engaged in your community. They say it takes a village to raise a child, and that's really true. This is not a CASA lens. This is a personal lens. I think that we've really gotten away from that concept of a village raising a child. We don't all know our neighbors anymore. Everyone's sort of removed and busy and on social media. Like, just take an interest in your community. You never know who you're going to impact in your day-to-day routine. Mm-hmm. So if you see something and you know that it's horrific and wildly inappropriate, everyone thinks, oh, well, I'm not going to call that in because someone else is going to call it in. I'm not saying just go call in anything, everybody. So don't take this out of context.
Right.
Right. But
now,
if you see something is definitely not okay, look out for children. Look out for all of the kids in our community. Protect everyone in our community.
And that's very great advice, because I don't know if you have seen Social Experience on, online. They have videos of Social Experience, but a lot of times bystanders will not say anything.
Correct.
They'll just keep walking, and you never know. If that was a real scenario, that child could be gone.
Yeah, whatever could happen. And so it's important that we all look out for each other, right? So we're also going to be at Archway Days, the 4th Street Fair, and Canal Days coming up. So if you don't have time to come out to the Morrison Reeves Library, you can check us out there, and we're happy to chat about information, or feel free to reach out to the office.
Okay. Natalie, thank you so much for joining us. I am so glad that you contacted me. This has been an eye-opener to see everything that you guys do, and then a call to action to help get volunteers for you guys.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. And I hope that someone hearing this, either CASA's right for you, or maybe someone. So pass on the word.
Definitely. That's Inside Richmond, the city's pulse. Until next time.